The Nauvoo Legion was a state-authorized militia of the city of Nauvoo, Illinois. With growing antagonism from surrounding settlements, it came to have as its main function the defense of the city of Nauvoo, Illinois, and surrounding Mormon areas of settlement. To curry political favor with the Saints, the Illinois state legislature granted Nauvoo a liberal city charter that gave the Nauvoo Legion extraordinary independence. Led by Joseph Smith, Jr., founder of the Latter-day Saint movement and mayor of Nauvoo, the Legion quickly became a formidable concentration of military power in the America West. In 1844, after controversy stemming from the Nauvoo City Council's suppression of a Nauvoo newspaper critical of Smith and his church's policies, Smith mobilized the Legion and declared martial law. Arrested for treason, Smith was assassinated by a mob. Soon thereafter, the Nauvoo charter was revoked, and the Nauvoo Legion lost its official sanction as an arm of the Illinois militia. After the revocation of the Nauvoo charter, the unsanctioned Nauvoo Legion continued to operate under the command of Brigham Young, leader of the movement's largest faction, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Young led the Latter-day Saints to what later became the Territory of Utah. In Utah, the territorial militia used the name of Nauvoo Legion. It was mobilized in opposition to the United States Army during the Utah War. It was permanently disbanded in 1887 as part of the Edmunds-Tucker Act, which disincorporated the LDS Church as part of Congress's efforts to punish it for its practice of polygamy. In 1839, Joseph Smith relocated his followers, the Mormons, from a hostile environment in Missouri to Commerce, Illinois, which he renamed Nauvoo. Voter-conscious Illinois Democrats and Whigs, including Abraham Lincoln, passed a bipartisan city-state charter for Nauvoo in 1840. On December 16, the governor signed it into law, granting Joseph Smith, and the city of Nauvoo broad powers. And among these was the authority to create a body of independent military men. This force was a militia similar to others in Illinois, and it became known as the Nauvoo Legion. At its peak, the militia had, by conservative estimates, at least 2,500 troops, in comparison to the approximately 8,500 troops within the entire United States Army as of 1845. The Legion was organized into 2 regiments called cohorts of infantry and 1 regiment of cavalry. A few light cannons were also attached. The Legion tended to be very top-heavy in that there was a disproportionate number of high-ranking officers to regular soldiers. Supposedly this was to elevate the social status and official standing of some members of the city. The Legion was able to draw on federal stands of arms. The most common musket issued to these militiamen was the Model 1816 musket. This flintlock musket was an American-built copy of the French 1777 Charleville musket. Also, the Harper's Ferry Model 1803 rifle was issued in smaller quantities. So the personal arms were also used. A small artillery piece, a mountain gun, was also issued. It was nicknamed the Old Sow and is on display at the Church Museum of History in Salt Lake City. Although the charter authorizing the Nauvoo Legion created an independent militia, it could be used at the disposal of the state governor or the President of the United States, as well as for the mayor of Nauvoo. Joseph Smith himself was Nauvoo's second mayor, and the Nauvoo court-martial also appointed him as highest-ranking officer of the Legion, a lieutenant general. This rank is one step above Major General, which most contemporary militias employed as their commanding rank. One motive for the higher rank was to prevent Joseph Smith, from being tried in a court-martial by officers of lesser rank. And we're going to get to why in just a moment. What was Joseph Smith afraid of being tried for? Well, in 1837, the Missouri Militia had contemplated a court-martial against Joseph Smith, an action that might have been illegal had it been carried out, as Joseph Smith, was only a civilian at that time. In the last month of his life, June 1844, Smith declared martial law in Nauvoo in response to various civil disturbances and initially deployed the Legion to defend the city, only to restrain the Legion from any action later. He urged Legion members to not take any action when the Illinois governor ordered Smith's arrest. So the governor of Illinois ordered Joseph Smith's arrest. And he said, "No! Nauvoo Legion members, stand down." Well, the Mormon leader surrendered at Carthage jail and was supposed to be under the protection of Governor Ford and the Carthage Greys, the militia of the neighboring city. However, on June 27, 1844, members of the Carthage Greys joined a mob that stormed the jail and killed Joseph Smith and his brother Hiram. Well, the Legion survived the loss of its commanding officer, and Brigham Young became the new commander of the militia in August 1844, though he had never previously been active in Legion activities. Rather than employ the Legion to protect his people from increased mob violence, though, Young directed most of his followers to leave the city. And Illinois was abandoned by the Mormons entirely by September 17, 1846, after a week of artillery shelling called the Battle of Nauvoo. I believe they were at war over this polygamy issue. The Mormons were at war with the United States. Upon revocation of the Nauvoo Charter in the winter of 1844-1845, the Legion was no longer recognized as a state militia, and its members returned the majority of its government-issued arms. Depleted of its official status, the Legion assumed a very minor role in future church affairs after being reorganized in Iowa by Hosea Stout on September 22, 1846. It was never actively employed in defense of the Mormon people until the Utah War, in which it served mainly to erect defenses and harass the Federal Army led by General Johnston. Some legionnaires served in the 500-man Mormon Battalion for the U.S. government in 1846 as part of its campaign against Mexico. However, the Nauvoo Legion itself resurfaced to prominence soon after Brigham Young led the first band of Mormons to Utah, then called Deseret, in 1847. Under territorial law, the Nauvoo Legion became the Territorial Militia in 1852, although it retained its name. 1849 conflicts with Native Americans in Utah County, such as the attack at Battle Creek, Utah, foreshadowed the 1853 to 1854 Walker War between the Nauvoo Legion and Indians led by Chief Walker. 20 servicemen and many more Native Americans died in the Walker War. The Legion was used again in the Utah War against federal troops entering Utah and the Utah Expedition. From 1857 to 1858, they employed tactics of supply destruction and avoided direct fighting. Local commanders and members of the Iron County Militia, overcome with suspicion and war hysteria, perpetrated the Mountain Meadows Massacre against a group of wagon trains traveling from Arkansas to California in September. At this point, Daniel H. Wells was the chief military commander of the militia, and it was also under the auspices of the militia that the groups of men were organized who were instructed to burn down Salt Lake City and other parts of northern Utah should the invading army, the United States Army, try to take up residence. Let that sink in. After this conflict, the federal government appointed Utah's territorial governor, and the Nauvoo Legion was allowed to exist at the command of the governor. It, however, was not as cooperative in imposing the colonial regime as federal authorities would have liked, though. During the American Civil War, federal troops either were withdrawn from Utah or in many cases left to join the rebellion. Johnston, who had led the invading federal army, being among the later group, the federal government made a reconciliatory approach to Brigham Young, requesting his help. With this permission, the two units of the reorganized Nauvoo Legion were gainfully employed by the United States to protect western mail and telegraph lines from Indian attacks in what is today Utah and Wyoming, but saw no action. Neither the Legion nor any other Mormon troops participated in the main theaters of the war, and the Legion's involvement ended in 1862 after Congress had passed the Moral Anti-Bigamy Act. The Nauvoo Legion had subunits organized in each of Utah's counties and functioned like most other state and territorial militias of the time. But the final use of the Legion was in Utah's Black Hawk War, 1865 to 1868, when over 2,500 troops were dispatched against Indians led by Antonga Black Hawk. Antonga Black Hawk was a Ute and has no connection to the Illinois South Hawk Black Hawk of the 1830s. In 1870, the Utah Territorial Governor J. Wilson Schaefer forced the Legion inactive unless he ordered otherwise. Federal troops dispatched in response to the 1870 Ghost Dance ensured Schaefer's order was enforced. The Nauvoo Legion never gathered again, and the 1887 Edmunds-Tucker Act permanently disbanded it. In 1894, in anticipation of statehood, the non-sectarian Utah National Guard was organized as Utah's official state militia.